You're listening to the Diplomats podcast on Asian geopolitics. As always, I'm your host, Ankit Panda, recording from Washington, D.C.
And I'm your co-host, Katie Putz, and I'm recording from Maryland.
Good to be back with you, Katie. How's it going today?
Doing pretty good.
And so, Katie, this has been a while, but we're actually joined by a guest today. And so I'm delighted to introduce on the podcast today Mohammed Taqi, who is a columnist at The Wire, an India-based publication. And Mohammed's also written for various other publications on Pakistan and South Asian issues. He is based in the United States, and we're very happy to have him here today. Mohammed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Katie. Glad to be here.
So, Mohammed, we have a lot to go over today because since the last time we did this episode, Pakistan has been through a tumultuous political period, seeing the premature end of yet another civilian prime minister's tenure in office. So Imran Khan is no longer the prime minister of Pakistan after a constitutional crisis that was resolved by the country's Supreme Court, resulting in a change of government now to the leader of the opposition, Shehbaz Sharif, who's the new prime minister of Pakistan. So we have a lot to cover. So just to give listeners a little bit of a preview of the issues we'll be talking about today, first of all, we'll begin by talking about what exactly happened. How did Imran Khan come to this place where he found himself trying to, resorting to extra constitutional means to hang on to power in Pakistan? What might we learn about the nature of the Pakistani military's role in national politics, which has always been prominent and remains so? And then, because this is the Asia Geopolitics podcast, we'll talk a little bit about the implications of these developments for Pakistan's relations with its neighbors, primarily India and Afghanistan, and its relations with the United States, China, and perhaps others as well. So, Mohammed, I'm going to turn it over to you to really walk us through what exactly happened here with all of this constitutional drama and how exactly Imran Khan came to experience this dramatic fall from power.
I guess in one phrase, it would be controlled demolition of the hybrid regime project that the Pakistan Army had put into place back in 2018. Yes, on the face of it, it was fall of a civilian prime minister, but Imran Khan never really was a civilian prime minister. He was a facade, a fig leaf for a hybrid regime project that the Pakistan Army had put into place back in 2018, but it had been in the works since at the very least 2011, even though Imran Khan has been in politics for 20-odd years, 20-some years. In 2018, essentially, the Pakistan Army stole the elections on behalf of Imran Khan. And prior to that, they orchestrated fall and disqualification of the three-time former Prime Minister Mia Nawaz Sharif. In assorted ways, Imran Khan was helped in agitational tactics and propaganda by the army's machinery leading up to the 2018 elections. And then it was supposed to be hunky-dory where the army and a modicum of civilian facade lived happily ever after. And for a period of time, almost three years or so into the project, it was working okay in the sense that it was okay for them, but not for the country. From get-go, it was poor governance, economy in shambles, really no economic plans, no governance plans, so to speak, other than really a whole lot of hot air and demagoguery coming from Imran Khan and his patrons. He had actually come into power promising that the stolen monies, and that is an allegation that he has thrown around loosely and consistently throughout his career, that the established political parties, which granted that they have a strong dynastic tendency, they have stolen from Pakistan and stashed the money abroad. And these hundreds of billions of dollars would be brought back and put to good use in Pakistan. Well, none of that came to fruition. Imran Khan did not have a plan B. Imran Khan did not have any type of economic scheme under his belt.
Right. And so the economic theft theory that obviously goes back to the Panama Papers crisis that brought down.
That is correct. But Panama Papers was sort of a windfall that both Imran Khan and Pakistan Army got. They really did not plan it. but they made hay while that Panama Papers story broke. And in the end analysis, it was obscure type of reason that they used to convict Mian Nawaz Sharif, even though his own name was not in those papers. It was Nawaz Sharif's family's business that were mentioned in the papers. He was convicted on something else, which was holding a residential or residency permit for United Arab Emirates, and not declaring a salary that he did not receive from his own son's company. So that's what they eventually nailed him on and disqualified him for life. But more than that, Imran Khan went after politicians as a class, as an entity, and smeared them and slurred them to no end, but had nothing to show for all these allegations. Not one of them could be convicted on actually anything substantial, not one. So the economy continued to be problematic. Now, mind you that under Nawaz Sharif, the economy might not have been jumping leaps and bounds, but growth rate was steady, above 5 or 6% GDP growth rate in Pakistan. Inflation was single digit. International, at least they tried cross-border trade, which and received a snub from the Pakistan Army. I know for a fact that trade with India was snubbed by the army, but overall, it was a business-friendly government. It was a government that preferred international investment to come in, and people were relatively happy with that prospect. Now, come Imran Khan, and the economy took a nosedive under him. Investor confidence just eroded. Any hot money that had come in just evaporated. Essentially, the economic growth came to a standstill before going down into the negative territory. Inflation skyrocketed, double digits. Then came along the COVID pandemic, which effectively was a boon for Imran Khan for two reasons. One, he could blame everything and anything on the pandemic, and on top of that, some of the economic facilities that his government did receive. But what they had delayed was that Pakistan was supposed to negotiate a package with the IMF at the time Imran took power. But since his populist rhetoric was far too nationalistic, he did not want to go to the IMF and delayed the inevitable till it was way too late. And eventually, when they did negotiate, probably 22nd or 23rd time Pakistan has received an IMF facility, and maybe 13th, 14th in the modern history, it was probably too late. Then he soured relations with Pakistan's traditional partners, even Saudi Arabia, and other entities. So the sum total of all of this was that economy was in shambles, but Pakistan Army tolerated all of that just because he was really their monkey. They would say jump, and the question would be how high. That's all there was to it. And what went wrong? What went wrong was that Imran Khan's thought was that this is supposed to be a project, and he was pledged that by the army, and they did not make any secret of it, that it's going to be a 10 years project. The first term is 5 years. After that, General Qamar Javed Bajwa would pass on the baton to somebody who is in sync with this whole project, and that somebody happened to be the Director General of the Intelligence Service, Inter-Services Intelligence, General Faiz Hamid, who was very tight with Imran Khan. And as the C Directorate Chief, he had orchestrated some of these election maneuverings and whatnot, and hobnobbing. So when Imran Khan last fall, around October, he wanted to retain General Faiz as the ISI chief. The army finally said no. What I've always maintained is that Pakistan Army has always chosen its favorite civilians, but it does not let the civilians have the luxury of choosing a favorite general.
Right. So let me bring in. So Katie, I know you wanted to sort of dig in on the military point, so let me just pass it over to Katie for a second.
Yeah, I wanted to ask at what point, did Imran Khan become sort of inconvenient from the army, and have they picked a new civilian, as you said, or has this change kind of thrown them for a loop also?
So this happened right around last fall, like I said, around October. It was brewing for a while. Imran retained the DGSI close to him, and army let him for a while. But this guy, as there's the convention in the army, he was supposed to go out and command a corps before he could be eligible to become army chief and so on. But Imran insisted that he wanted him close to the federal capital, and he was able to retain. But once he insisted and did so quite publicly, the army said no. Enough is enough, and that's where the rift came into open, and it just snowballed. And then Imran had been presenting to army that he is their only choice. And what was happening was that the former Prime Minister Mia Nawaz Sharif, who has had a very long history with the army, first as their preferred civilian, very shortly thereafter he was at loggerheads with the then Army Chief General. This is 1993 that I'm talking about, General Abdul Wahid Kakar, and then Nawaz Sharif eventually morphed into a champion of civilian supremacy, asserting himself in all the three stints that he had as the Prime Minister. So Imran's pitch to the army was that, look, it's either me or this guy who despises your guts. So you cannot have it both ways. It's either me or you will have to contend with Nawaz Sharif, who was going after the army, all guns blazing. He had put together a conglomerate coalition of opposition parties who were holding rallies. There was this firebrand religious cleric, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, who was also ticked at the army for ditching him. He used to be their former ally and a political ally, and quite a bit of a supporter of their Taliban project. So this is what was happening around October, November last year. And then the opposition parties, including Mia Nawaz Sharif's younger brother and the now Prime Minister Mia Shahbaz Sharif, who was a former three-time Chief Minister of the Punjab province, he convinced his brother and other opposition members, opposition party leaders, to let him have a go at it and present the opposition as a viable alternative to Imran Khan, with some conditions that it would not be as pliable a dispensation as Imran Khan had been, but it would provide an alternative, and they can actually bring the economy back on track, where the military, which currently, as of today, they're probably looking at reserves which could barely pay their salaries over the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's kind of where the Pakistan's forex reserves are at the moment. So army was looking at a very dire predicament, where they had brought in this guy who was supposed to do their bidding, but also deliver to an extent, and was a complete and total failure, really. So this alternative, as it came along, army came up with this idea and started professing it, that they're going to be neutral, politically neutral, and remain above the political fray. Now, they had brought in and held together Imran Khan and his party and government. He had plurality in the National Assembly, but not the simple majority, and the army had effectively cobbled together his coalition. So what started happening was that now they were not queuing in these partners and allies, and everyone was allowed to make their own choices. Now, in theory, this could be neutrality, but it wasn't. The scaffolding that held Imran government's facade together was just taken away from him, and the guy was in a free fall. On the other hand,
Mohammed, what does this say sort of more broadly about Pakistani politics? Is this a moment where sort of we've seen a civilian process reassert itself, the no confidence vote, for example, because Imran Khan is the first prime minister in Pakistan to be ousted in that way?
yes.
So is that am I just looking on the sunny side of the street when I say that is the civilian process working as it should, or is this fitting into sort of maybe a new modality for the army to assert control but not really
So a little bit of both. I'm a political worker by training, and when there is political upheaval, you always see an opportunity in it. Yes, the army was on the ropes. Their own conceived and produced and executed project was falling apart in front of their own eyes. They could not do a whole lot to repair it, and they had to look for alternatives. Have they learned a lesson? I guess only the time would tell. But when they are this week where they have to wrap up, and I've called it a controlled demolition. They feign neutrality, but there is no such thing as political neutrality for an entity like army, which has been at the helm of political affairs for the last 70 years and some change, perhaps.
So it's neutral until there's some pushback.
Yes, but there is room for civilians to assert themselves. The army is weak. They can, like you said, there was a vote of no confidence, which nobody thought would eventually go through. And Imran took a wrecking ball to the whole constitutionalism in Pakistan. He tried to stall it, stonewall it, everything. And then these Supreme Court came and delivered, which really hasn't done that kind of thing, except for one occasion where Nawaz Sharif's 93 dismissal was reversed. But even then, the army had prevailed and Nawaz Sharif had to go home. That was one occasion. And on another occasion, Supreme Court had said, yes, assembly dismissal of 1998 by Ziaul Haq was illegal, but we can't restore it. A lot of water has flown under the bridges. This time around, they delivered. So this is progress in that sense. Has the army actually become totally neutral, and would they stay out of politics? I don't think so. I really feel that it is. I can recall in the living memory in 1988 when General Ziaul Haq met this unexpected death in the air crash, and suddenly. The elections which were slotted for, I think it was November 1998, they had to go through, and the army decided that we are going to let those elections be based on multi-party system as against the partyless elections what Zia had run before, and let the things move from a complete and total martial law control or army control dispensation. Martial law had been lifted, and let it go towards a multi-party democracy, but they continued to exercise the levers of power that they had. Then we also saw a very similar thing happening where the army took a step back, and that was 2008 when 2007-2008 when General Pervez Musharraf had to eventually step down and let the democratic multi-party system come in and take some shape, and we saw a continuation of that till this hybrid project came along. But army never did relinquish political power in Pakistan in all those years since 2008. They had been controlling levers. It really got to their head again, and in 2018 they did what they did. So I think that yes, there's an opportunity for the civilians to get their act together, get their ducks in a row, assert themselves. But civilian supremacy is not going to be an event, and and this certainly would contribute towards that process if they wanted to be that. But the road is long and arduous.
Well, so Mohammed, just to turn gears, change gears a little bit here. So, look, I mean, the traditional understanding of Pakistan's foreign policy and sort of regional policy in particular is that, again, the military and the intelligence services are the final arbiter of the country's direction. And, I think in the days and weeks leading up to Imran Khan's eventual political demise, we saw some public disagreements between him and General Bajwa, right? I mean, I think the reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in particular, when Imran Khan sort of flies into Moscow and talks about how excited he is, and then the general contradicts him, and of course I think we've also seen some differences on India there. And so we are the Asia Geopolitics podcast, so I have to sort of steer you in this direction, and it might be too early to say because we've just had a new prime minister in Pakistan now for a little over 4 days, but what, if anything, do you think the political tumult means for how Pakistan is likely to relate to India, to Afghanistan, where I think there's going to be perhaps a significant effect, and also the United States, given how publicly anti-American Imran Khan had been, including in alleging all these foreign conspiracies leading up to his removal from power. So why don't we maybe begin with India, and then perhaps Katie can ask you a little bit more about Afghanistan and others.
Sure. If you look at the opposition parties when they were building this whole thing to a crescendo, the foreign affairs were hardly mentioned in that campaign. Economy and inflation and domestic governance issues were the primary agenda. Foreign policy was as if they just did not want to touch it along this road. But it eventually will have to be discussed. Pakistan, for example, I think it is one of the lowest countries on the trade to GDP ratio, for example, in the last 140, 150, if not 160, 170 ranking down there. And you have a huge market in India. You have historical relations with Afghanistan that many of the Pakistani leaders have been trumpeting, that we'll go through Afghanistan, reach out to Central Asia. The only trade that is happening currently is with China, which is almost a predatory type situation that is happening now. And the new prime minister, he is a businessman by training, as against a sportsman like Imran Khan, which sort of have a military mind of sorts. They see things in black and white. It's win or lose, even though cricket has a draw. But talk about poor timing and poor understanding. On the other hand, businessmen, like politicians, are looking to make things possible. And it is inevitable that some manner of normalcy has to be restored between India and Pakistan, between Pakistan and Afghanistan, even though Afghanistan is under Taliban right now. But again, I think the civilian priority right now is to get the domestic act together, consolidate their position, and then talk those issues. There probably is going to be a gradual and controlled thaw, and army is going to control that. I have not in my mind, they have not relinquished that aspect of control. You see, historically, having this kind of a convenient piñata in Afghanistan, or this dreadful scarecrow that India has been, it justifies the army's existence, and it cements its self-anointed position as the entity which describes what the national interest is, describes what patriotism is, and whoever is outside the pale of that realm, they get to smear people as traitors and foreign agents. Imran Khan has gone on this sort of anti-American ranting and railing. I think in the end analysis, probably even in the U.S. Even the U.S. diplomats and the establishment in D.C. understands that this is a lot of this is grandstanding and an attempt to become a political martyr in Pakistan and energize his base. But I think it is going to be a sore spot for a while. It would take actually a concerted effort on behalf of the new government to engage all these governments that Imran has alienated, including Saudi Arabia for that matter. There's this anecdote about how Imran flew into New York City on Mohammed bin Salman's plane, and then something went wrong, and Salman called his plane back, and Imran had to travel on his own. So these kind of things have actually happened. This is a guy who was a rookie. He may have been a cricket star at some point, but he was rookie at politics and an upstart, and he knew it. And some of this grandstanding comes from that fact that in the heart of his heart, he knows that he has to stand on Putin's shoulders or something else to appear tall. And unfortunately, he timed it wrong. He miscalculated a lot of that. I wouldn't say that the whole trip, for example, was his idea. That must have been vetted by the army establishment as well. Like Director General ISPR said yesterday that it had been discussed, but the timing was so absolutely wrong. Even though for a populist and demagogue like Imran, he's trying to spin it. To make it look like that because of that, the United States tried to go after him. But again, it's such a half-baked theory that he's peddling about the U.S. intervention that other than his own base, hardly anybody would buy it.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly interesting to watch. But if you look at sort of the timeline of events, there had been agitation since you said since October, since last fall, over Imran Khan's sort of longevity in the post. I did want to ask one follow up on Afghanistan. Do you expect any changes in sort of the Pakistan government's approach to the Taliban? Imran Khan was pretty happy about the Taliban takeover, I would say. But that's always been an interesting relationship. So, what if anything do you expect to change about that?
I think it really is a hot potato that probably the new government is not going to touch for a short while, but it will have to. There's no way around it. Having a Taliban emirate next door is going to have its consequences for Pakistan. We have seen the rise of re-Talibanization and the Islamic State, Khorasan, making inroads into Pakistan now. There have been a string of terrorist attacks in the first quarter of this year already. The Pakistan army, as it says, they have been trying to fight them, but they're also protecting some of their previous assets and rehabilitating them. This old distinction, arbitrary distinction that they make between the so-called good Taliban who don't attack the army versus the bad Taliban who do attack the army, that is still very much there. And lawmakers, progressive lawmakers from the former tribal areas have been writing, speaking about it, that this has to end. So this government will have to contend with this issue, because if they don't, and with the political bickering that is going on, Taliban is going to present itself as an alternative, in at least in those areas which are in the periphery, if not in the towns and cities. But eventually, it does encroach on the urban population, and that is when the state really does wake up. So they would be well advised to start looking at it. Afghan Taliban, for their part, they have shown their true colors. Even the U.S. diplomats, who in all their naivete, they thought that Taliban has somehow reformed and evolved and morphed into something very modern IRA type thing. Even they are conceding that, this is back to the 1990s. Well, it's not back to the 1990s. They put on a very good show, and you, out of your political expediency, just bought into it. The United States did have the luxury of packing up and leave, but Pakistan does not. You cannot change your geography. You cannot choose your neighbors, just like one cannot choose one's parents. This is a situation that this new government will have to handle and negotiate. One of the good things is that the new Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif is known to have very good relationship with the military brass. I would suggest to him that why don't you put those good relations to good use? Try to instill this fear of God in the brass, that what they have done over the years is wrong. Pakistan and Afghanistan have cordial relationship, but it does not have to be through the Afghan Taliban. There are many other entities who would be very willing to talk and coordinate with Pakistan and open up the contested Durand line for trade and other progressive means. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. This new government is coming in at a very tough time. Economy is obviously the top of its agenda and the biggest problem that we are dealing with. But governance, the Talibanization or re-Talibanization, those are really the issues which cannot be put on the back burner.
Well, Mohammed, I really want to thank you for joining us today and helping us make sense of all of what's been going on in Pakistan. I know it was a lot to cover in one episode, but we covered the domestic politics leading up to Imran Khan's demise, the new government's priorities, and the implications for foreign relations. So really, thank you for coming on and sharing your insights.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Katie. Pleasure
Thank
to
you
be
very
here.
much
Really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Great. And so for listeners, if you like what you heard on the podcast, make sure you subscribe so you can keep up with future episodes. And if you've been a subscriber for a while but you haven't yet left us a review, please do that. You can do that anywhere you really get your podcasts, and we really do appreciate that. So thanks a lot for listening, and Katie and I will be back soon with more. All right.